Good evening and welcome to your viewers. Because as we round off the year, we want to reflect on some of the stories that make continental headlines. Of course, for me, there are two big issues we need to look at on the negative side, but also one big issue on the positive side. To start with the positive for a change, the whole issue of And good evening and welcome to your viewers. Because as we round off the year, we want to reflect on some of the stories.
Welcome back. You're live on Your View. I'm Andanyati in for JJ Tabane this evening. Now, as you know, a big part of the show involves hearing what JJ has to say about some of the most topical issues of the day. Today, he's going to be reflecting on some of the domestic affairs within Africa, things like intercontinental trade, governance, and so forth. And this links quite well with our Africa Roundtable discussion that we're going to have a little bit later on as we reflect on the political developments, including the elections in Algeria. So, as is always the case, here are JJ's views.
And good evening and welcome to your viewers. Because as we round off the year, we want to reflect on some of the stories that make continental headlines. Of course, for me, there are two big issues we need to look at on the negative side, but also one big issue on the positive side. To start with the positive for a change, the whole issue of inter-African trade really got a shot in the arm this year with the signing of that international, international economic, integration treaty that countries have now begun to wake up to. Kwame Nkrumah was a big advocate of African unity, and have always said that political unity is only one step to economic unity, but also economic unity won't happen without African political unity. And so it is heartening to see that African countries are beginning to realize that the pathetic levels of trading with each other has got to change. It has to change. It cannot be that our levels of intertrade are only at 15% when other continents are talking 60 and 70% levels of trading with each other. And so a positive thing there, of course, also the year ending with the Africa Investment Summit, where billions were pledged in line with that integrated economic plan. So wonderful there, well done to our African leaders. Another positive thing is the release this year of what is called the State of Governance in Africa. That report that was signed off by the African Union in February of 2019 shows that some progress is being made in as far as governance is concerned. And I think that we must pat ourselves in the back. I haven't heard in recent memory of coup d'etats, things that used to be an everyday thing. You wake up and you'll be told, oh, there's a coup d'etat in Sudan, there's a coup d'etat in Eritrea. That is some so much disappeared because the leaders have agreed amongst themselves with all of their weaknesses. I mean, they really have a lot to do, but they've agreed that if you go into power without the necessary elections, without the necessary legitimacy, you will not be welcome at their table. Of course, they are yet to extend that courtesy to Morocco, who's busy occupying the Sahara, but that's for another day altogether. So two positive things in African stories this year that I truly think we must celebrate. But on the negative side, the passing of Robert Mugabe exposed the extent to which we fail as African leaders to introspect. We really fail. We are really bad at introspection. Alema as well as Tabane have shown that this to be true. These are very bright people. Mbeki is one of the brightest statesmen I know that my friend, the philosopher king, and when you listen to his I'm an African poet, you realize here you went to the depth of the soul and the depth of the mind to craft this message about how we are all Africans. So I've got a lot of time for President Mbeki. I've got a lot of time for Julius Malema. I think he's one of the sharpest sons of our soil. But both of them failed me this year when reflecting on the legacy of Robert Mugabe. Julius Malema made a meal in Parliament about how we cannot listen to colonialists telling us how bad Mugabe was. And so his speech missed a point of saying, what do we learn from someone who moved from being liberator to being a dictator? Liberator to latter-day oppressor. He missed that point. It was a missed opportunity because indeed we are looking at somebody like him who has what we can call a demagoguery streak. Just a little bit of a taste of power. We don't know how he will behave. And so it worries us when something is glaringly written on the wall that Mugabe stayed in power for 4 decades. And we think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It would have been fantastic if the economy of Zimbabwe was covered in roses. That he stayed because people were saying, oh, if he goes, we're going to starve. But they were starving in his presence, especially the last 2 decades. It was a place that moved from being a basket, a food basket of Africa to being a basket case of the continent. But it wasn't the currency. They tried all currencies. They tried Chinese, they tried rands, they tried everything. I think I'm told there's now a Zimbabwean dollar again. But with that, $30 I think the Mugabe's people were queuing for steak and oil and bread and fuel before his demise. And so it behoves us as African leaders, young and old, never to hero worship our leaders to a point where we can't point out where they have gone wrong. Yes, Mugabe achieved many things. There's no doubt he was imprisoned, he went to, through the most and was harassed by the colonialists, and he led his people to the promised land. And when they arrived there, he was waiting for them to oppress them. And that's how he died. He didn't die out the big hero. And so it's incoherent as it is dishonest to think you can whitewash the legacy of Mugabe and tell us one side of the story. The reality is his legacy is mixed. He liberated these people, but he also oppressed them. He also killed and maimed them. And if you are a student of history and you cannot bring yourself to just acknowledge where even your hero has gone wrong, then you've got a lot of growing up to do. Mbeki, similarly, and I can't say of Mbeki he must grow up, because it means, and he is now, this is how he has just resolved to be remembered. That with all the brains he has in the world, he then stands on a public platform at a memorial lecture and says he doesn't know of one Zimbabwean who wanted Mugabe deposed. He must be living in cuckoo land. Big. But it may not be cuckoo land, it may just be out here, behind the big walls here, surrounded by security and so on. He has never met one person, one, who wanted Mugabe deposed. It must be difficult, when you really have time for someone and they say something so odd as to be nonsense. Who voted for MDC? I wonder. Who voted so that Morgan Tsvangirai could be prime minister? I wonder. I wonder whether the people, millions of them, who crossed the border to South Africa for greener pastures, did not want Mugabe deposed. They loved Mugabe so much. They wanted to live far away from him. Come on, Zizi. Come on. We look up to you, man, as a statesman, to guide us, to reflect on the future of our continent. We look up to you. We really do. But for you to say such a nonsensical thing in 2019 was for me a disappointment. I don't know of one, not one. Hey, but maybe we shouldn't be surprised, because remember, Mbeki couldn't remember one person who died of AIDS. One. There are 300,000 people at least, but he has never met one. It's bad. It's bad, the extent of failure of introspection of our leaders. Especially when it comes to power. Hey, one of us all are level leader over like a power over there. I had an interview this year at some point with the General Bantu Holomisa, who's been in power himself for more than 2 decades. DUDM doesn't know any other leader. It's the NFL. And we said, "Alo one ilengkwangwa ba be di fela ko parliament." Mara o ka mutso re why o ka re ha o tsamaya yo o ta o roha yo. Are why so o tsa Queen of England. You know, good politicians ne, when they want to defend power, they will give the worst of examples. On the one mouth they will say colonialism is bad, it's terrible, it has killed our people. Hey, these people drew the borders. But in a split second, they compare themselves with the Queen of England. Queen of England, it's a look, if we don't face to go to Maya, Parlona her 20 years, if I still Rezamai. But General, I've got a lot of time. The people have a lot of time for sometimes to let me down. But General Holomisa, I've got a lot of time for him. But you are not the Queen of England. You are an elected leader. And you need to go and give Ngwangwa a chance to lead. I mean, what I would tell is 92, since our parliament, that's why every day hero. When is he going to enjoy his grandchildren? Has power gone so much to the head that you can't see? And somebody will say, no, maybe I want a state funeral. But we'll give it to you, man. Look at that. You still get a state funeral, no problem. It's bad, the failure of African leaders to introspect and say, here we are going wrong, there we are going right, let's build a continent. But it was generally a good year for Africa. And of course, congratulations to Cyril Ramaphosa, who chose Africa Day as a day of his presidential inauguration. That we hope that doesn't end there with the symbolism, but as he prepares to chair the African Union, he will assist that body to answer critical questions about the trajectory of development of our continent. We wish him well as he prepares to play that big role in the continent in the year 2020. Let's take a break now.